Farage makes no secret of his close relationship with the US president. He's been an ardent supporter of Donald Trump since his first term in office, regularly appearing on the airwaves as something of a de facto spokesperson whenever Trump's in hot water. However, there are some major downsides to this strategy, and in the last week, these downsides appear to have become even more pronounced. So in this video, we're going to explain Farage's plan to closely align with Trump, the benefits of this strategy, and why it might work against Farage in the near future. Don't feel overwhelmed by endless news stories. Find out exactly what you need to know every day with TLDR's Daily Briefing. Listen along in your favorite podcast app or by clicking the link in the description. Now, it's worth starting this video by looking specifically at Farage's relationship with Trump. The relationship between the pair goes all the way back to 2016, when Farage first backed Trump's candidacy, telling a 15,000-strong rally in Missouri that Trump could beat the pollsters in the election. When Trump did just that, Farage became the first UK politician to meet the president at Trump Tower, and ever since, Farage has been a passionate defender of Trump here in the UK. He railed against Trump's arrest in 2023, claiming the judiciary was biased, and in the run-up to the election last year, defended Trump's claims that some immigrants in the US were eating cats and dogs. Now, there are two main upsides to buddying up to Trump. The first is he gets attention from media outlets in the UK, who provide him a platform to defend the president. The attention he garners from this is exactly what sets him aside from other right-leaning figures, and it's hard to argue that this hasn't played a massive role in his success in the polls recently. The second upside is that he creates a spot for him inside of Trump's outer circle, with him not only having the ear of the president, but also being invited on the campaign trail, which again gets him even more attention, particularly in this instance in the US. With there being so much more money in US politics, there's a good chance that this attention will result in some big political donations, akin to the one being suggested by Elon Musk prior to them falling out. All of this puts him in a better position to fight the next general election and to take on the more established parties. That's not to say though that this strategy isn't without its drawbacks. The main downside so far has been that in this de facto spokesperson role, he's had to defend some pretty unpalatable statements by Trump when on air. Consider this for instance.
Words do matter, though, don't they? And we're hearing this morning, the New York Times is reporting about this. And also we've heard from John Kelly, Donald Trump's former White House chief of staff, saying the former president fits into the general definition of a fascist, and said that Trump spoke of the loyalty of Hitler's Nazi generals.
This stuff is just ridiculous.
But did he say that?
I don't know. And you know what? I've got friends who say when they come into London Bridge next to your studios, at least Mussolini made the trains run on time. It doesn't make them fascists. It's a form of talking. Look...
It matters if potentially the next president of the United States was talking about the loyalty of Hitler's Nazi guards.
Look, you know what? None of it matters. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. I've talked about the international picture. The other picture,
but
of course...
But would you say it if it doesn't matter?
No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
Oh, goodness me. None of this matters. This may matter to you. You may think this is a really big deal.
I'm just confused. There's a tension that you're saying it doesn't matter, but you wouldn't be prepared to say it yourself. So it does.
People in politics will say almost anything.
Now, so far, this hasn't actually hurt Farage all that much. A lot of what he's had to defend are instances like this, where Trump says or is accused of saying something inflammatory. Farage tends to just brush it off and move on, and no one really bats an eyelid. As Luke Trill pointed out, writing for the FT, the bigger issue comes when he tries to align himself on a policy or stance that is contrary to the British popular opinion. Most recently, this has been on Zelensky and the war in Ukraine. But even before this, it occurred when Farage aligned himself with Trump on his climate skepticism. So let's take a look at these issues one by one. Now, I'm sure you've already seen this video, so we won't recap it here, but essentially, after it all kicked off on Friday, Farage defaulted to his role as Trump's UK defender, and in doing so, claimed that Zelensky was to blame for the disagreement, suggesting that he should have worn a suit because Trump is incredibly old-fashioned about dress codes. This is on top of previously stating that Zelensky had overplayed his hand, and that it was very unwise to tell the US what would happen if they didn't support him. The issue here is that this just isn't something that the British public will get behind. It was Boris Johnson, the Conservative Prime Minister, who first threw his weight behind Ukraine when Russia invaded. His successors continued this support and was backed by opposition leader Keir Starmer, who now, as Prime Minister, has continued to provide support. The point we're making is that in the UK, support for Ukraine has been bipartisan since the invasion began. And as a result, we've also seen public support for Ukraine, irrespective of people's political affiliation. This seems to remain true even today, with Zelensky enjoying a 35% approval rating from the British public for his response to the war in Ukraine. Conversely, Putin's approval is a mere negative 58. Even more specifically on the events of Friday, a huge 61% of Britons blame Trump and Vance for what happened in the Oval Office, versus just 12% who blame Zelensky. So in aligning himself with Trump, Farage seems to be alienating himself from public opinion. As we mentioned earlier, this isn't the first time it's happened either. For years, Farage has expressed his climate-skeptic views, something that put him in lockstep with the current US president. In their contract with the people last year, Reform's UK manifesto, they claimed that net zero means reducing man-made CO2 emissions to stop climate change. It can't. Climate change has happened for millions of years before man-made CO2 emissions, and will always change. We are better to adapt to warming rather than pretending we can stop it. This is similar to the kind of rhetoric you'd expect from Trump, and again, it puts Farage in direct contrast with public opinion. Analysis from More in Common found that a plurality of Brits are worried about climate change, and that's by a margin of 6-1. Brits also back investment into renewables, with even Reform voters supporting green investment by a margin of 2-1. On climate change too then, Farage is alienating himself from public opinion by cozying up to Trump. It should be unsurprising then that since the UK general election last year, Farage's closeness to Trump has been the largest barrier for people supporting reform. This is in addition to members of the public largely agreeing with the statement that Farage is in the pocket of Donald Trump and that he is Britain's Donald Trump. Just for the avoidance of doubt, the same pollster asked the public whether being described as Britain's Donald Trump was a good or a bad thing, and only 18% of people responded that it was a good thing. The point we're trying to make here is that Farage has clearly aligned himself with Trump, and increasingly this is becoming a problem for him, as it's moving him away from the British public. If he continues down this road, he'll have to make the decision to either continue his support for the president or sever ties in order to get back in line with British popular opinion. If you didn't know, Too Long is our regular physical magazine, with our next issue diving deep into the people who control our world. The 25 most influential people, as rated by the TLDR team and you. The next edition contains that entire ranking, as well as articles and long reads about all the most influential people, the power they hold, and how they wield their immense influence. We also discuss a variety of other topics, from the issues facing Starmer in the UK, to the rise of the new right in Europe, to if peace can really hold in Gaza. These are all topics we discuss in videos, but the reporting you'll find in Too Long is some of our best writing, with us able to spend longer on the stories than is ever possible on YouTube. If you're interested in checking it out and supporting the channel, then you can pre-order a copy right now at toolong.news. There you'll find two versions of the magazine, the standard and the premium editions. By buying the premium edition, you not only get the magazine, but you also get about 2 hours of exclusive content where the team debate and discuss their top 25 ranking, as well as reacting to the audience's vote for the very first time.
We could potentially have a monumental jump on our hands.
Yeah.
Hands up for leapfrogging into sixth.
The most powerful European country, the second biggest economy, the nuclear power that is... The nuclear power!
Yeah.
You'll also get regular access to a behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen, and get your name printed in the thank you section of the magazine. Whichever edition you want, head over to toolong.news to find out more. And if you subscribe to the magazine using code SUBSCRIBENOW, you'll be able to get a copy for as low as $4.99. Anyway, thanks for your support, because Too Long really does help to fund our journalism year round.